I want to welcome you all, and I'm Andrea Shaheen, Graduate Employment Assistant Director in Law Career Services, and co-hosting this with me is Dorie Pina, Assistant Director in APD. And this is how to get a judicial externship, and it's kind of a few different pieces of that puzzle in getting a judicial externship. And we are so fortunate to have with us today Justice Miguel Marquez. He is Associate Justice in the 6th District Court of Appeals. Before becoming a member of the bench, Justice Marquez worked extensively in both the private and public sector. And he started his legal career at Cooley and moved to the firm Remcho, Johansson & Purcell. He then entered public sector as Deputy County Counsel in San Mateo County and also was Deputy City Attorney at San Francisco City Attorney's Office. He transitioned to become the General Counsel for the San Francisco Unified School District and was then County Counsel for Santa Clara County before being appointed to the bench. So, we'd like to welcome Justice Miguel Marquez. Thank you for being here. Justice Marquez, can you tell us a little bit about your role currently with the 6th District right now?
Sure. So I am new to the role. I was appointed in May of this year by the Governor's Office and had to go through a confirmation process that took place in June 28th. So that's the day I became an Associate Justice on the Court of Appeal. You may think, maybe not, you may think that I look a little bit young, and in some ways I am. I think I'm the youngest appellate court justice in the state. So it is a little bit unusual. Most of my colleagues are a little bit older. I think on our court we have 2 people that are in their mid-70s, 2 that are in, 3 that are in the early to mid-60s, and then myself, and I'm 45. So, so what do you do on a daily basis? You know, it's actually a lot busier than I thought it would be. I thought it was going to be, you know, you get this almost like an academic and look at cases and read the briefs and think about it and do the research and write up the opinions and do all that kind of stuff and take as long as you need. But the reality is that, like any public entity, the courts are constrained by budgets, and we don't have enough resources, and so we're just trying to get the work done as quickly as we can. And we get assigned, my chambers will get assigned about 9 cases. That's what we just got assigned to us in November. And I am in charge of researching those cases, reading the briefs, writing the opinions, and preparing for oral argument, doing all that. In addition, I have, since all appellate courts, if you're unfamiliar, you know, trial courts, you have a single judge up there. In the appellate courts, you have a panel of 3 whenever you have a case that's on appeal. So that means I'm also on panels for about 18 other cases this month. So that means there's 27 cases I have to be in 1 month. Plus I'm on the writ panel. I've been on the writ panel for 4 of the 5 months I've been on the court. In the writ panel we get probably 35 to 50 writs a month. And many writs are writs of habeas corpus. We have any number of prisons in Monterey County in particular, and so anyone who claims that they are being restrained unlawfully in prison for a variety of reasons, will write a writ of habeas corpus and ask us to, not necessarily, I thought before I started doing this job, I thought it meant release me. It doesn't mean that. It's generally, hardly anybody says release me. What they're really saying is fix this condition that I have that's improper or illegal, or, you know, a lot of them are, frankly, you can bring an ineffective assistance of counsel claim through a writ of habeas corpus. So a lot of folks who find themselves in prison and say, this isn't what I wanted, they realize or they feel that the counsel was ineffective, and that's how they landed in prison. So it's a lot, you know, what is that, 35 plus 27? It's a lot of cases you have to deal with every day.
Mostly criminal cases?
And it's mostly criminal. I'm going to guess 70 to 75% criminal. My background, as you heard, is in civil law. So I thought to myself, you know, I'm going to love civil and I'll tolerate criminal, but it's turned out to be the opposite. I find criminal to be fascinating. I find the stories to be real and compelling and just inherently interesting, and I find the law behind it all to be fascinating. Very much steeped in constitutional law, Fourth Amendment search and seizure, just all kinds of constitutional issues coming up every day. And I found that honestly, the civil stuff that I thought I was going to love, I still love government, civil rights, government, labor and employment, all that's interesting. But the run-of-the-mill, party A sues party B, one of them gets money, one doesn't. Of course, I'm going to do my duty, and I'm going to be as good as I can be and be responsible. But I don't find those nearly as interesting as the criminal cases. So it really is about 70 to 75% of the case criminal.
Now, were you a clerk when you were in law school?
No. So I thought it was kind of interesting when I saw the actual title. But I believe that it's very important.
It's more to get them all in
here. So I wasn't a clerk, and neither in law school nor post-law school. But I think it's important to talk about whether it's a good thing, and I think it's an incredibly good thing, and something you should pursue. I never had an opportunity, or just got wrapped up in classes, and I thought knew what I wanted to do in law school, which is to be a transactional lawyer, which is what I started doing. And frankly, the way that happened is I got a first-year summer clerkship at Cooley Godward, which, if you don't know, is one of the big firms. And life as a summer associate is great. I got to tell you that. We took trips on the yachts in the bay, and got the firm credit card, and got to go out and charge up whatever we wanted. All kinds of fun things. And I said, I like this. This is my calling. And then I became an associate, and it was very different. But they convinced me at the time. I took Securities Regulation 1 and 2. I took Income Tax 1 and 2. I took all kinds of courses to prepare me to be a transactional lawyer in the private sector, and I ended up doing that for about 1.5 years of my career, and then I moved to something different, the public sector. And I raised that to tell you, you might have an idea of what you want to do now, but at least in my cohort of people that went through law school, when I went through, we all did some very different things from what we thought we would do when we were in law school. So be prepared for that, because I don't think we were the exception. I think we were probably the rule. Even as I think, though, it would have been very helpful had I clerked if I wanted to become a judge. So that sounds kind of odd because I became one and it worked. But I think I have a very non-traditional path that I've had to pay a price for in many respects. But there have been in the past folks appointed straight from being lawyers to being appellate court justices, but it's very rare. And those who have been appointed in the past have usually been in the governor's office and know the governor, and they work with them, and so they, as a payback for all the work they did, they get appointed to these positions. I happened to be working in my office minding my own business, and I got a call with the governor's office saying, hey, would you be interested in doing this and applying, and we were interested in appointing you. So, but if I wanted to be a justice, it would have been a lot smarter for me to have clerked. And why didn't I clerk? I actually, after law school, was intending to clerk, but I grew up poor and was seeing myself just go further and further and further in debt. And so everyone started applying for clerkships. I'm like, well, let me do it too. You don't want to be left out just because you weren't on the ball. And I got a number of callbacks, and I called one of them, and I said, okay, and I had already interviewed with law firms, and they were very nice. They paid for me to go out there. They put me in a nice hotel and took me out to nice dinners and all that. So I asked them, how do I get reimbursement for the plane ticket? They said, we don't reimburse. I said, what do you mean? And they said, no, you have to come out here on your own. And I said, oh, well, all right, well, what does it pay? And they said, oh, GS9 or whatever it is, whatever the level is, it's pretty low. I don't know what it is today, but in my day, it was like $28,000. And meanwhile, Cooley Godward's offered me $90,000. I'm like, do I want to make 1/3 the salary and have to pay to get the job? Well, I made a mistake. I was just naive and concerned about not having money. But in retrospect, I can tell you I really made a mistake, and I should have gone to do that. I got lucky in my career that it didn't harm me in that way, and I continued to progress, but I really wish I had done a clerkship either in law school or right after law school. And the reason why is I ended up going to Cooley Godward, and you learn in those big firms very slowly, right? I was on a as an example, it was a patent dispute between two large corporations, and I was one of 20 lawyers on that case. what am I really going to learn? I was the bottom junior guy, and you'd see this list of 20 people. We'd all check off our names that we got a particular pleading or what have you. And you just don't get to learn very fast. If you go do a clerkship, you get to see the whole thing in one fell swoop over and over and over. So you have the big picture in your mind so that when you do go to your firm, you can, as you learn it slowly, you have a big picture context to put the litigation or whatever you're doing and remember it and have it have meaning to you. I think I spent the first year and a half in private practice just wondering how did it fit into the big picture. So that's why I say I regret not having done that.
So what types of tasks and responsibilities would the law students, as clerking during law school, what types of responsibilities would they have in that capacity?
So I haven't had a clerk yet, and I look forward to starting the program. What I would do in my chambers, as I said, I had 27 cases that I'm on, but I also have 3 research attorneys, and they're senior lawyers who have all been practicing. In my case, they've all been practicing at least 23 years, I think is the most junior one. So they help me out quite a bit. But they're assigned, each of them, for example, this month we'll get 3 cases. And we'll all read the briefs, we'll talk about it, we'll come up with an opinion, but they're going to do the initial draft. But that leaves the other 18 cases just for me, and that leaves all the writ cases just for me. And, I would need help. I would want, we just had an issue this morning, a very complicated issue that I can talk about only to the extent that it was an oral argument, so it's a public process, but about whether or not UC Santa Cruz can expand to include more enrollment, and if it does so, where will it get its water supply, because Santa Cruz has a big problem with the amount of water it has. And they would run into water shortages in a drought year and whatnot. And it all came down to a sort of an obscure government body called LAFCO. And we're all scratching our heads trying to figure out what is LAFCO's authority and what does that mean with respect to a law called CEQUAL, the California Environmental Quality Act. And we're going to get supplemental briefing from the parties on that based on this morning's oral argument. I never had a chance to really go do my own research on LAFCO and figure it all out for myself. If I had an extern working for me, I would have said, hey, can you help me understand LAFCO, understand how it fits into this case? And I think it would have fundamentally changed the oral argument this morning. But that's the kind of, I think you have to recognize that as students, you're still learning, and we know that. So I think you should approach externships with the recognition that in many respects it's a service that we offer to law students. But there's also some joint service back. I think that's how I would utilize a law student. Teaching them at the same time they're going to help me do research and hopefully write up a nice memo to help get me up to speed.
So there would be the drafting component, and in terms of preparing you for, or when you're on the panel with the other justices, is there any assistance that a student can provide in that respect?
Sure. I have my lawyers on the 9 cases that they're working on. They'll give me questions for either side, proposed questions that I might ask. Oh, wow. On the other 18 cases, I would ask a law student, hey, write up some questions I should ask this side, write up some questions I should ask that side.
Wow, that's really cool.
Yeah, and that would be, kind of interesting. It's always interesting when you pitch a good question, the answer that you get back.
That's great. Now, I think some students are curious if, this is something that they should do over a summer and then continue it into a semester, and, for how long should they do it? If they, continue with one judge or justice, is that more beneficial than, switching judges, have that deeper relationship, professional relationship with a judge for a longer period, or kind of try out a different judge? Do you have an opinion on?
I don't think there's a hard and fast rule. I think it depends on the relationship you establish with whomever you're working with. I think you can learn a lot by doing a clerkship, as we talked earlier, by seeing the process from the big picture and getting a contextual understanding of how the law plays out. But that being said, there's a whole other component to clerking that's extraordinarily important, and that is it's probably one of your first and most important steps to getting a job, to networking. Judges know a lot of people, and a lot of people, if a judge says, hey, I just had this extern, he or she is great, you should at least give them an informational interview. They'll do that. But that's a double-edged sword, right? Because that means if you do go, especially when you're in law school, it's hard to find the time to make the commitment that you made to be there Tuesday 10 to 2 or whatever you commit to every time. But what I would say is you're actually hurting yourself if you go and do an externship and then you're not responsible about it. And you go, you know, I've heard stories and I've seen interns, who knows, maybe they went to a party or something the night before, but they'll go and sit in an oral argument, and instead of taking notes to help the justice fashion the opinion, they'll fall asleep. And we all know that, we see that, and we all talk about it, and we say, oh, geez, that's terrible.
That wouldn't be Santa Clara students.
And you know, and somebody, even if you don't ask for a reference, somebody might call me and say, hey, didn't this person work for you? You know, I say, yeah. And I might not want to, you know, ruin their chances, but you can tell. Before I was a justice, I used to hire a lot of people. I was in charge of a legal office with 66 lawyers. And trust me, I've done plenty of reference calls where you could tell when you make a call about somebody if they really like the person or if they're just being polite or they don't want to get sued. So you want somebody to call, when they call, to say, oh yeah, gosh, you'd be so lucky to have that person work for you. They were here, you know, earlier than they were supposed to be. They worked hard. Their analysis was sharp. They really were engaged. So make sure you take advantage of clerkship in that respect.
What do you want to see from someone applying to be a clerk for you? What type of background or what type of skill set from previous employment that would be valuable for you, that you would kind of prioritize?
I think if you're talking about while they're in law school,
yeah.
You know, I think I would start from the premise that you're in law school, you're learning, and everybody brings different life experience and different attributes that it almost doesn't matter what, in a hard and fast way. I think what always impresses me when I interview someone and say, do I want them to come in, is how engaged they are in wanting to be a lawyer, how much have they demonstrated that they're going to work hard, that, you know, frankly, I don't need somebody who's going to be a problematic extern, right? I mean, I've had problematic employees, and trust me, it's the last thing you want. Someone who's really committed to the position, who understands, you know, for me, and I think different people have different philosophies, I wouldn't want to see someone who, when you ask them, why do you want this clerkship? Well, because I want this, and I want that, and I want this, and it's great for me. That doesn't work for me at all. It has to be much more related to, well, it's a form of public service, it's how I want to build my career so I can, you know, help others or do whatever. You know, I think I used to sit on the admissions committee at Old Hall when I was there. And what you realize is that there's way too many people qualified to be in law school than there are slots. So you always ask yourself, well, how do I determine between person A and person B? And what I remember looking at is just saying, look, they're both qualified to be here, they're both going to be good students, they're both going to do what they want to do, but which one is going to make better use of that degree and make changes in society, make this a better place to live, etc. That's how I would do it. I'm not saying that every justice would be that way, but that's what I do. So I think the same would apply here. I would interview 4 or 5 people, and the person that I think would make the best use and is hungriest and really wants to excel in a clerkship position, that's who I would start. And as far as background, I think you have to have, you know, the law school is made in such a way that the first year is, I don't know how it is here, but it's generally pretty set. So you take your civil procedure, you take your criminal law, you take all your basic courses. So I would, you know, beyond that, I wouldn't have any concerns.
Like requiring if they had a previous practical experience where they were writing and doing research that gave them that skill prior to being with you. I mean, if they didn't have any experience, it's just from law school, it would be okay then.
It would be okay, but I think,
showing those
yeah,
others.
certainly what I would care, our bread and butter is research and writing.
Yeah.
So I would say, give me your best writing sample, and I would read it and hopefully be impressed by it, and then, you know, maybe I shouldn't give all my secrets away, but then I would grill you on it, because I want to see how much of it do you remember, how solid are you about it, you know, how does your mind work analytically, and I would quiz you hard, just on that writing sample.
I think that's good advice to actually, you know, when you're submitting a writing sample, make sure you know it pretty well. Don't just kind of go, oh, that was my, you know, law raw paper from way back when, and you know, don't forget about it.
What happens a lot of times is people do that, and they say, well, and they try to make an excuse. I haven't looked at that in 3 years.
Yeah.
And I say, well, how much do you really want this job? Is my first question. And then they start getting all confused in their mind, and then they start switching their analysis, and it just falls apart. So look at all that stuff. It also always is impressive to do your homework in advance and research. So look at the court's website, look at the cases that were just issued. If someone tells me, oh, I saw you just issued a decision on, you know, gang conditions as a probation condition, that's going to impress me. It's going to tell me that they really want this, they've looked at it, they've done their homework, and they're someone who is probably worth bringing in. So, yeah, be prepared.
Would the law students have the opportunity to interact with some of those senior attorneys that you were talking about, or do they mainly interact with, from your point of view, for you as a justice, or do they get to interact with the other clerks, or what's their chances to be able to grow and learn from their placement?
So I don't know how all the courts work. I know how ours work, and they're very chamber-driven. So there'd be less of an opportunity to work with other research attorneys for other justices. But within the chambers, you definitely work with the 3 lawyers who are working on all the other cases. And we've already talked about it. You know, I'm still trying to, you know, get my feet on the ground and all that kind of stuff. But once I do start a program, I've of course talked to my own team, and I said, look, in many respects it's a form of service, but it's also going to be very helpful to us to have people here help us do research on these important issues. And they agree. They're looking forward to having students coming over to the chambers and helping them out with work. And in particular Santa Clara, because it's so close. It took me 10 minutes to get here. Which is very nice.
So it's really a win-win. The student would get to network with additional attorneys. We get to network with you, of course, get to know you, get to know them, different writing styles. And then from your point of view, it's also being able to get something of substance that the court can actually use, or that you can actually use.
Right.
Right?
Right.
So it's we have to concentrate, as students, we have to concentrate on a win-win situation, where I'm getting something, but I'm also getting something back.
Right, that's right. And that shows in the interview, and if you can show that you're willing to give and take, I think that's all that we look for.
Please feel free to ask questions to Justice Marquez. We have, you know, nobody's
in regards to a writing sample, what substance do you want to see? Are you wanting to see a synthesis of rules, an application of rules, both? Like, I mean, how big a writing sample? Like, I mean, I've heard horror stories. People just want a 2-page writing sample, and it's like, what do you put in a 2-page writing sample? You know, it seems like I could, you know, there's so much, you know, from a 10-page paper that I don't even know where to start.
Yeah, I would say 10 to 20 pages, and I would say definitely applying rules to a set of facts, because that's all we do.
Yeah.
And that's probably the trickiest thing we do, and doing it in a simple way that that is practical. Right? You don't. It can't be too academic. Because at the end of the day, we're dealing with real people's lives and real issues, and we need to know: are you going to be helpful in the chambers to getting that work done? But good question. Other questions?
I read a little bit late, so I apologize if you already addressed this. What is the process to apply for your chamber?
I'm new. I've only been on the bench 4 months, and so I'm looking at a spring clerkship program. So I haven't gotten that done yet. But I'll be in touch with folks to let them know how to do that. And I know Justice Mihara, if any of you know Justice Mihara, he has an active program that he has. And it's a neat idea. Maybe I'll fashion mine alongside his. It's a summer program, and part of the summer clerks will spend in the Superior Court, and then the other part of the summer they'll spend it in the Court of Appeal, so they can see both sides. And I thought that was a great idea. And he works with some of the judges in the trial courts. So definitely look for Justice Mihara's program, and I'll see if I do something separate or if I join in with him.
We'll definitely post it once we get more information. It'll be on Simplicity. All the information you'll need to apply will be there. And then either one of our offices can help you, ABD or LCS, when that time comes.
Once you do start a program, would your considerations for hiring a 1L or a 2L be the same or different? What would be those considerations?
From my point of view, it'd be the same. I have a philosophy in life, and that I don't. I'll give anybody as much responsibility as they're willing to take on and they're capable of taking on. And I feel, I don't even think I was 40 years old when I became General Counsel of San Francisco Unified School District. Many people said, oh, you're too young. And I just don't, I've never subscribed to any of that. If you barely finished your first year, it doesn't matter. I know some folks who barely finished their first year who could be like a 10th year lawyer. They're just naturally that good. So it wouldn't make a difference to me. Other than, I mean, I'd be honest, if somebody had particular experience after their second year and they did something interesting, yeah, that's going to weigh in favor of hiring them, but categorically I'd say there's no difference. Particularly, I don't know what it's like here, but a lot of students when they go to law school, they have other experience before they even went to law school. And you got to learn how to leverage that too. You got to remember, there's a ton of lawyers out there and law students. You got to make yourself different and distinguished and you know, stand out from the rest. And you know, I don't know what that means for you individually, but you got to think about that, because from our perspective, anything you open up, you're going to get 50 to 100 applications. How one rises to the top is always a mystery in many respects, but you know, it's a challenge that you get to control yourself, because you get to define yourself vis-a-vis others.
You mentioned a couple of things. One, you know, taking on, you know, as much as you can, you know, really putting yourself out there to take on as much as you can to learn. And, you know, are these things you attribute to your success and to kind of being general counsel at such a young age at the San Francisco Unified School District? What are some other things that you attribute to that success? You
know, every challenge that I have, I approach it the same way, and that's just bury your head, do the work, and the rest will follow. And for me, it's work. You know, I was the other day talking to somebody. This actually goes back a couple of years, but the World Cup came on, and you know that comes on every 4 years. And so I thought, where was I the last World Cup? And I started thinking about timing, and it dawned on me. Let's see if I get this right. In 2004, I was a deputy county counsel in San Mateo. And then in 2005, I was a deputy city attorney in San Francisco. In 2006, I was an assistant general counsel at the San Francisco Unified School District. In 2007, I was a general counsel. In 2008, I was the assistant county counsel here. In 2009, I was the acting county counsel. In 2010, I was the county counsel. Then I finally kept the same job in 2011, and then I became an associate justice in 2012. And I think if you had put that in front of me and said, is this something you want to do? I'd say, no way. If you don't know, every time you start a new job, it's a new position. It's just a huge learning curve. It's very exhausting and it's hard. But taking it one day at a time and saying, yeah, this is a challenge, but I'm gonna just bury my head, do my work, do it to the best of my ability. And what ends up happening, honestly, is people recognize you. Like I said, it wasn't my idea to become an associate justice. It was the governor's idea. And I just went along for the ride. And that's, to me, the best way to make your career, is have other people look at you. You know, if you do an externship, work really hard, and everyone will notice. Because we all want colleagues who work hard so that we can all share the burden of the work and learn from one another.
That's true. That makes a lot of sense.
Can you talk a little bit about judicial clerkships as attorneys? I never did a judicial clerkship, but I was an attorney, and I understand that from our point of view, when we find judicial clerks, or managing partners or hiring partners, whatever it is, if you're doing nonprofit, if you're doing for-profit, it's prized. They're really thought in the legal community. They're one of those jobs that, even though you're getting paid $28,000, the learning curve is not commensurate with the pay curve, right?
Yeah.
Why is that? Why is it one of those things that are just prestigious?
Why is it? I don't know. That's in the law. You'll find that there's many things like that. Working for a big firm, you know, is a resume booster. Clerking, but there is this sort of, I wonder. See, this is my weakness. Since I didn't clerk, I don't know what I wonder. Do they have a secret handshake? Because I don't know it, you know. But there is this little clique where they know, oh, who did you clerk for? And they start talking about their judges and whatever else. And so they have this camaraderie, and they're all, you know, frankly. I think you get these clerkships if you're one of the better students, and so then you're iced out of a clique of students who have, and lawyers who are going to be successful. So that's one of the many reasons to be a clerk. And I'll admit, you know, I tend to just do my own thing and you know, try not to worry about that stuff. But I do feel, you know, it's one of my regrets. That's why I was going to be honest about it. It was a mistake that I made for good reason, but I don't know if it was a good reason. But at the time, it felt like the right thing to do. But it was a huge mistake not doing clerkship.
You said you had to pay the price of not doing one. What was that? Was it just the learning curve was quite a bit steeper, or how?
Among the things, yeah, that's one of the things. You know, truth be told, I was the boss to many lawyers, many of whom did clerkships, and I think they said, well, you wouldn't know because you weren't, you know, I've heard that kind of stuff. Well, how do you know? You weren't a clerk, and when I was a clerk, this is what we used to do. what do I say to that? They're right. It's kind of, you know, in law school, one of the things I didn't do was take administrative law, and then I had a career in the public sector where administrative law is huge. And it's funny, I actually probably know administrative law as well as anyone. But I have this insecurity that I've never seen the whole big picture because I didn't take the class. Way back in law school. And I know it's ridiculous, but you kind of feel the same way about clerkships. It's less about what did they learn in many respects as opposed to, gosh, they did it and I didn't. What do they know that I don't know? And that mystery's out there. I think those who did clerkships use it well. And you know, you can just feel that camaraderie as soon as one of them mentions, oh yeah, I clerked for Judge Reinhardt. Oh, I clerked for so-and-so. And they start going and you're just immediately left out of that conversation. You know, it's not about being friends, but it is about that kinship that they have, and you'll learn, you know, I've, again, been very lucky in my career, but I also thought the other day about it, and I think there's only one job I ended up having where I saw an ad in the paper and I applied for it, and that was in San Mateo. Other than that, it was always somebody giving me a connection to somebody, giving me a reference, and, you know, it's that network that they talk about. And I've had many jobs, as you've heard. And they're all from, again, just word of mouth. So that's far more important than many other things that you do in law.
Now, this experience of a clerkship, whether it be within law school or, you know, upon graduation, that can really apply and be applicable to a variety of practice areas, whether it be criminal, civil. I mean, how do you see that benefiting a variety of practice areas? Because I know everybody has different interests, but I think that this experience could be beneficial.
Yeah, you know, it's funny when you think about, even thinking about your question, I've never, when I hear somebody clerk, I don't think, who do they clerk for and what kind of cases do they work on? It just doesn't even cross your mind, because I think courts just have such a varied docket that you're going to work on a variety of different cases anyway. More than anything, it says, oh, they accomplished something. They must have done well. I think, you know, the presumption is they must have done well in law school, so they must be smart and they must be hardworking, and you get all those good benefits from having done that. So it's more about the sort of the place that it puts you in a general sense as opposed to the specific knowledge that you learn. But I would never say, oh, they did a one-year clerkship. They must know how to, the skill set of A, B, or C. I would never make that logical conclusion.
No, but if there's an interest in some sort of litigation type of practice, it's a good, I mean, or even, I don't know, what if somebody, you know, thinks that they want to do corporate or thinks that they want to do transactional work, and they're sitting here thinking, well, you know, that was what you wanted to do at one point.
Right.
And, you know, maybe it's something to do in school to really see, am I going to rule that out completely?
Yeah.
I don't know.
Well, you would think that being in the courts, it would be more oriented towards a litigation practice. Right?
Yes.
Because that's what you're doing.
Oh, yeah.
You're not doing transactional work there.
Yeah.
But there's plenty of transactional lawyers who did clerkships and they benefit from it. The big firms, depending on what you do as a clerkship, will give you a big bonus, huge bonus, and they count it as an extra year. So the law firms really prize it, and you know, some of it is specific, but if you clerk in the right court, where a law firm appears frequently, you know, everybody knows it's valuable information to have the inside scoop on how the work is processed. At the end of the day, judges and justices are people, and have their own biases and worldviews and whatever else. And if you know someone on a personal level, you can tell them, hey, you know what this justice really cares about is X or Y, or what, you know, when I worked with them, they were most convinced by this line of argument. I think that's why firms pay that extra bonus. But it really is helpful to get to know who you're arguing before. When I was county counsel, that's the very first question I would ask in litigation, is you know, they'd say, here's the case. I'm like, okay, I'm less concerned about that. Who are you in front of? Because judges, you know, they can't escape their backgrounds. And if it's a judge who was a prosecutor, I know how they're going to be thinking. If it was a judge who was a public defender, I have to think about that. So people that know those judges, every once in a while someone say, oh, I clerked for that judge. Come on in. I need to talk to you. You know, I need to understand this person a lot better.
So if you're in the process right now of looking for a judicial externship, how would you recommend that we actually research the judge in herself? How would we find out more about the judge?
You know, I'm sure you've seen Judgepedia.
Right.
You know, the internet, that's what I do anyways, as you look through Judgepedia, the internet, whatever else. If you can figure out who their clerks were in the past. And you'd be surprised how helpful people are willing to be. I think there's a fine line between being too aggressive and then just being aggressive and polite at the same time. But you'd be surprised how many people want to help others. And all you have to do is reach out to someone and say, hey, I am interested in clerking for this judge, and I know you clerk for them. I wonder if you'd have 10 minutes to speak with me. And people will take that call and help you out and tell you what's important to that judge or that justice and help you get that clerkship.
A lot of your classmates are also working for judges during the school year, and a lot of the judges, and I don't know, Justice Marquez, if you know, if you could speak to this, but a lot of the judges will ask their current clerks, you know, do you have someone that when you leave to go on to do something else, do you know somebody that can take your place? So that's a huge, I know that's a huge source of hiring clerks come from your classmates.
Word of mouth.
Word of mouth,
that
yeah.
goes back to my point of, you know, I only got one job without a word of mouth connection.
Yeah.
The same thing's going to
Exactly.
happen because, you know, what the common saying out there is, you know, you don't want to hire the person who interviews best, but the person who performs best. And that's really hard to tell from a 20-minute interview. So if somebody can vouch for you, hey, this person, I've been in law school with them, I'm impressed by them, they're great, that's going to go so long away in terms of thinking for the ultimate decision.
Don't forget to use your Santa Clara alumni, right? A lot of them are on LinkedIn. You can see if they've clerked for the judge that you're interested in. Call them. Tell them you go to Santa Clara, or send them an email, however it is. And same thing the justice just said. You know, do you have 10 minutes that I can speak with you? And, you know, it's one of those things that he is absolutely right. It's, at first, getting yourself out there and asking people, it's hard to do. But then you start to realize that people are helpful. People generally do want to help you. I mean, you'll always get the person who doesn't, and that's fine. You move on and you go find that person that does. But use your network. Start to use your Santa Clara alumni network.
And particularly, there's a lot of judges and justices who are from Santa Clara Law School. So I think in our court, if I had to guess, Justice Primo is a huge Santa Clara Law School person and supporter. Justice Elia, I think, came here. Is that right? So at least 2 out of the 6. Yeah, just the 2 out of the 6. But, you know, I would approach them. And you'd be surprised how loyal people are to their own law schools. So that's a connection you'll have right away. Yeah. I forgot what they call it. There's a term, because I'm not... this is my adopted school, by the way. I went to Bolt, but Bolt has just not been as kind to me as Santa Clara has been, so I call this my adopted law school. And there's a term for it, but apparently, you know...
I think a lot of us...
What's that?
I'll adopt Santa Clara, too. To be you, and they weren't very friendly.
No, it's a great law school. I mean, it really is.
I disagree with that. What about for students that go in, and I know you haven't had a clerk yet, but what can they expect in terms of being able to grow while they're, in other words, they're writing when they first start as opposed to their writing when they finish their externship? Would they expect to be able to see exponential growth with that? Would they expect?
To me, you know, you don't want to have someone just write a memo that goes into a file. I mean, that would just be such a waste. Hopefully what they write, and they'll be willing to help, and as I said, I'm willing to give people as much responsibility as possible. I would let them write an opinion on their own, if they were willing to do it, you know, and work with me on it. Or what would be especially interesting is if I have a dissent, because I have to do those on my own, because of the way the panel structure works, and if you want to, you know, help me write that dissent, that'd be exciting and fun. But I think at the end of the day, there's a big quality control process in the courts already that's sort of institutionalized, and if you're going to play that role and help somebody get one of those opinions out the door, you're going to learn how to do top-notch work. And I think it would be neat to be able to point to, you know, go look at 15 Cal Out 4 283, that's my opinion, that I really helped write, and that would be a nice experience for you to have too. And a nice thing to sell when you're interviewing with folks.
You're writing them all on your own right now then, with the help of your research attorneys?
Right, I mean, the research attorneys are critical and they help us out a great deal, but at the end of the day, you have no idea who they are. It's all under my name, and so of course I edit heavily and work closely with anybody on any opinion, and that's what I do for law students. Again, though, it would be how valuable and how hard have you been working, and how much have you convinced me that I should sign off on that. It all comes down to that.
Real quick, I want to ask you about your mentors along the way. Have you had mentors that have been pivotal in down your career path, and you know, is that something that students should be thinking about?
Absolutely. You know, I was just communicating with one of my big mentors, who's Ann Ravel, who was my predecessor as county counsel here in Santa Clara, at Santa Clara County Counsel's office. And the reason I was communicating is to congratulate her on, she's now the chair of the FPPC. And if you're following the news at all, you'll know that they just did a rush to the Supreme Court to find out who in Arizona gave the $11 million against Prop 30 and for Prop 32. And she's right in the middle of that, working with Kamala Harris, and then looking at criminal and civil sanctions and whatever else. But she's been instrumental to, opportunities I've had. Even with respect to, the governor's office did call and urge me to apply to be an associate justice, but she was in Sacramento talking to the governor saying, hey, you should appoint this guy, because I've worked with him and he did great work when I was working with him. So that really helped out a great deal. I would actually never work somewhere unless I felt I was working for somebody I could learn from. And that was my role. So when I worked in San Mateo, and Tom Casey was the county counsel, he was extraordinary. Great guy, I learned so much from him. Went to Remcho Johansson and Purcell. You probably don't know Joe Remcho, but he was sort of the lawyer to all of the Democratic politicians. So he was Willie Brown's lawyer, Gray Davis's lawyer, Bob Hertzberg's lawyer, and I wanted to learn from him. When I went to San Francisco, Buck Delventhal, he's known to be the state's most knowledgeable municipal lawyer, so of course I want to learn from him. But that's really how you're going to learn to be a good lawyer, is by working alongside excellent mentors. And I think to reiterate the point made earlier, people want to help and people do want to mentor you if you're going to be of value to them, if you're going to be appreciative of the help that they're giving, and not be dismissive, not, if you say you're going to be somewhere at 10 o'clock, be there at 9:55. That stuff matters a great deal. And you'd be surprised how many people want to help, because we want to see you succeed. And we all know, I think anybody who has been successful didn't make it on their own. We've all been supported by so many others, and so we want to pay that forward, I guess. I don't know the right term.
Do you regularly meet with the mentors that you had? I mean,
I
how
keep in
often
touch with
do
them. Yeah, and I had a confirmation hearing. It's a confirmation hearing in front of the Chief Justice of the Supreme Court, the Attorney General of the state, and then the presiding justice of your district. So I had my 5 mentors who I worked for be my witnesses, if you will, and speak on my behalf. That's how I did it, and it worked really well. And I keep in touch with them all the time. And especially when I don't know what to do next on an issue, it's always good to have somebody to talk to.
That speaks directly to your professional reputation, which starts when you're in law school.
Right.
Right? It starts with starting in law school, your professional reputation, having the integrity, having the, like I said, being on time, making sure you're keeping up with things, that you're doing the right things. I mean, here, right, you guys took that oath, and it wasn't, when you first started, and that's something that's going to carry with you. I mean, I know it's kind of funny maybe when you took it, but it was an oath you took, and it's something that's going to carry with you. And your ability to have 5 people that you've worked for at your confirmation hearing goes to show what your work ethic was like.
And not just that, though, but when I left county council, went to the court, I had to pick my research attorneys. And I had a bunch of them who were already there, and I'm trying to gather information, and certainly the people in the county counsel's office who had gone to Santa Clara Law School said, oh, I know so-and-so, and I know so-and-so, and I can't tell you much about their practice now, but in law school, they were this kind of student, they were that kind of student. And I'm like, wow. What you're doing today is going to affect your career in the future. And I don't know if that's the point you were driving at.
It is. Please don't forget that.
It's really true. I was shocked, and I said, wow, and I heard some negative things about someone. I said, geez, makes me think, should I hire this person?
The reputation for law school stuff.
The reputation, because at the end of the day, that's all lawyers have. It's one of the frustrating things to me. I actually was in undergrad, started off as an engineer, and I liked it in many respects because it's numbers, 2 + 2 = 4, no one can tell you any different. And law, it's all opinion. There's no right opinion. There's no way to say my argument and my logical conclusion is exactly right. It doesn't work that way. So it's all about your reputation, and so you have to protect it and you have to build it. I guess in a way, whereas lawyers, we all make our own brand.
With every opportunity that you had, were you actively trying to pursue another one while you were in that current opportunity, or is it just naturally a nomadic shift based on whatever you were doing in your performance?
There's one exception that I didn't mention, and it's I went to Contra Costa County Council, and I lasted there 12 days. And it was a second mistake I made in my career. And that one I was looking to get out. But short of that, I just bury my head, and then someone taps me on the shoulder and says, "Hey, we want you to do this. And are you willing to come be the general counsel? Are you willing to come?" And they say a lot more than that. It's just usually I say no, because you'll find that people just people will reach out to you and make those. So part of it is doing the hard work to build a reputation so that people do want to choose you, but then also being smart about what opportunities you take and which opportunities you pass up on. A concern I've had is Santa Clara. I was there for about I think I was 2 days short of 4 years. And I think that was my single longest job. But for you guys, I think it's different. I used to get criticized a lot for that. And now I think the criticism's going the other way. If somebody's in one place for more than 10 years, they're like, what happened? That person can't move. I think there's just, maybe it's a Silicon Valley, I don't know what it is, but I can tell you that if I see someone moving around every 3 or 4 years, that tells me they're good. And maybe I'm biased, but we all, as we all talk about, we say, well, this person started in this firm and they've been there the whole time. What's the problem? So, and I would say the odds that whatever your first job is the job that you're going to have to that it's the perfect job for you. It's got to be so small, because I don't know anybody who found their perfect job the first time out. It's possible. But I would say don't be afraid of looking for other opportunities. But being responsible, the one thing I'm most proud of is every job I've left. When I left, they always told me, if you want to come back, you're more than welcome to come back. And I think that's got to be your goal. And I think you need to stay there long enough to make that impression and not just use them, but approach it in good faith. But I think people understand if you do good work and somebody taps you on the shoulder and say, why don't you try doing something else, and it makes sense for you, as long as you handle it professionally, transition your work professionally, people get it. But as a rule of thumb, try to stay at least 2 years, 2.5 years. I think anything less looks really bad.
That's good. Even though there were 1 year stints along the way. But
yeah, and I also think it looks bad if you do move around a lot, if you're not progressing in your career. I've had resumes where, who knows if the person's any good, this as I was leaving, but I look at the resume and they've been in 10 different places over a 25-year career, and it's all the same type of position, just with a different place. And you start to wonder, to say, what's wrong with this person? Why doesn't anyone want to keep them? So you want to show some strategic planning and thinking in your career path, and you want to be able to enunciate that and explain it to others. And when I went through the judicial vetting process, I was asked a lot about that, because they want to see someone who went to did a clerkship, went to a law firm and did trial work, became a judge, and then wanted to be an appellate court justice. That's their ideal, and I was none of that. And so I had to explain, well, how do you have so many jobs and whatever else? And I was able to explain each one as, well, then I got tapped to do this because I had done this work, and like I said, it worked out. But you have to have that narrative, and you got to think about it and be prepared to answer that question.
That's a great point. To always be prepared to be able to give that kind of promo about your past, your resume.
Yeah, and use each other. What really helps is these mock interviews. I don't know if you guys do that.
We do, yeah.
But mock interviews really help out. You'd be surprised. You don't want to do some of what I did, which is to interview without rehearsal and then just get beat up and walk out with your head down. It's not fun. Get prepared. Have someone ask you those tough questions. Rehearse them. And be ready for when you do your interviews with whoever it is to look good.
Be prepared on that writing sample.
Yeah,
Have somebody quiz you on the writing sample. I think that's a good one too.
Right, it's hard to find the right writing sample, right? It has to be, I've turned down so many people because of the writing sample. And the only way I'll describe it is if I get a 10-page writing sample and I read it, if at the end I'm like, wow, that was great. This person really knows what they're doing. It was simple, it was sophisticated, and it was all that. It's great, but I've had ones where I read it, and as I'm reading it, my mind wanders off something else. I'm like, oh, let me read this again. And I read it, and there I go again, wandering off, and I'm like, I just don't even want to read it. So make sure you pick a topic that's interesting, that's going to engage the reader, that leaves them at the end saying, wow, that was a great, very interesting issue, very well written, and it's going to be much easier to get a job. I don't know how you judge that, but that's where a mentor could help. You could show me your writing sample. and I'll say, oh, this isn't gonna work, or I'll say, this is great. So, happy to do that.
Let me jump in quickly, and I'm going to play off of everything that the Justice just said, and talking about practicalities here quickly at Santa Clara about securing an externship, and some of the difference between internship, you heard the Justice use that term, and externship. These are all the things he told you about, some of the things that you'll be doing as a judicial clerk, prepping the cases, oral arguments. Some of the things I don't have up here, which he spoke about, is, and I think is one of the nice things, is working with the other research attorneys. Everyone has their own style, everyone has, each judges have their own style and what they like and what they don't like, and so being able to learn how to adapt your writing is also something that's huge. You develop those research and writing skills, as the Justice said, exposure to the local bar, right? Connections that you're going to make, and as the Justice talked about, it's prestigious. It's very looked upon very favorably by all areas, whether it's for-profit, non-profit, corporations, it doesn't matter. Clerkships are prized. So what's the difference between an internship and an externship? Substantively, none, right? There's just a term that some folks will use. For our purposes, we use the term externship to describe a couple of things. So it's a learning opportunity that occurs outside the classroom, supervised by someone other than faculty, right? Because in this case, you'd be supervised by the Justice, for example. And you're going to receive credit, right, towards graduation. That's what an externship for us is, okay? The term often externship sponsors, right? So sponsors, right, will use the term internship to describe opportunities within their organization. But purposes of what you're doing, internship, externship, no difference, but you're going to be receiving credit as an extern. That's where Santa Clara comes in, and we make that distinction. And it's not our distinction, it's actually the ABA, American Bar Association, that makes that distinction. So general information, generally opportunities are open to, for externship purposes, right? You might secure an internship your first semester as a 1L. That's fine, but you would not be able to receive credit for that. You're going to have to wait until you've completed your first year of academic study in order to get externship credit. Externship programs are they're graded on a no credit or credit basis. Okay, we give, for example, Justice Marquez, we would ask him at the end of your externship, we would give him a form to fill out for us to make sure that you've complied with what he wanted you to do. And that he's going to sign off on saying, yes, this person should receive credit, or no, they shouldn't. So if you've fallen asleep during an oral argument, you're probably going to get the no from him, okay? Which means you're going to get no credit. You don't get your money back, you just get no credit. There's a limit to the number, we call them field placement units, right? And there's a limit to the number of units you can count towards graduation. Generally speaking, it's 12. And then some B is just some bullet points there. If I can speak really fast, although I do speak quickly, I would speak really fast during that. It's kind of like the guy during the auto commercials. And then point number 4, you must also satisfy the credit necessary for graduation, of course, right? For traditional classrooms. Generally, externships must be supervised by an attorney who's been, or obviously a judge who was an attorney, active member of the state bar for at least 5 years, generally in California. We sometimes make exceptions to that, 4 years, if there's other supervising attorneys around that you can connect with, so it depends on that, but we're pretty strict with the 5. And then you have to be engaged in legal work, right? You can't be answering phones, you have to do exactly what, for example, you'd be doing for clerking for a judge, which would be exclusively legal work. Some more little ins and outs of the program. It's 3 or 6 units if you're going to do a part-time externship, right? We will do 2 units for graduating 3Ls, so we'll make some exceptions. We'll try to work with you. If you come up with a really good clerkship and you come up with a really good, a really good externship, and you come up with a really good story, come talk to me. I tend to be as within the confines of what I'm stuck to. I'll be as flexible as I can. Full-time judicial externships and part-time judicial externships. That depends on your judge. Some judges will only take full-time students, which is a 40-hour week, right? 14 weeks at 40 hours. And some judges will do 3 units or 6 units, so part-time. And a unit is 50 hours, like it says up there. So it depends on your judge. You've got to work that out with them. Okay, if they only want full-time, that's it. And if they only want part-time, then that's it. So that's entirely up between you and them. How do you find them? SCU Law jobs, right? Find your own placements. Career services, these guys are really, really helpful with that. Career services are helpful with everything. They can be your mentor for now too, and also your law faculty, as far as like, your submitting your writing sample and making sure your cover letter looks good. Ask these guys. I mean, I applied for this job. I went to my career services office and had my old, she actually moved on, but I had my old mentor, she's still my mentor, from my days at BU. She actually read my cover letter to apply for this job. So they never go out of fashion. You develop that relationship with all career services because they're fantastic. There you go. And I think Andrew's fantastic. Registration, some of the things you have to have, right, for an externship, for judicial externship, you've got to have that 2.6 minimum GPA. I think the justice will tell you that you're going to need to hire one than that to actually get that clerkship, but for our purposes, that's what you need. You have to complete civil procedure. You're going to get a law instructor, your law instructor, to sign off to say that they think that you're qualified, because the research and writing skills, just like the justice said, that's what he's really looking for. It's what he needs. It's what he does for a living. He's got to research issues, he has to understand issues, he's got to vet those issues, and he's got to write those issues. So that's what you need to be able to do too, and you need to be able to do it extremely well, just like he does. Other prerequisites, depending on what's going on with your judge, and if you are a JD MBA student, first of all, congratulations. And second of all, you've got to obtain permission from that program instructor. Submit your completed applications to us at the ABD office. Make an appointment with Career Services. Again, these guys are fantastic. And after you accept your externship offer, all the forms are online, but you need to do that. Submit those forms to us. If it's a judicial externship, there's not one we're not going to approve, put it that way. We think they're fantastic too. Deadline, add drop period, or once class is full. So if you come in after class, we do our best to accommodate, but sometimes we have to say no. A full class is a full class. I'm sure you're used to that. There is a seminar course component to your externship, right? That's required by the ABA. We're not here to torture you, okay? Although I do like doing that every once in a while. I'm not here to torture you. The ABA requires that in order for you to receive credit for graduation, you must have a contemporaneous course component to your externship. Okay, so it's not us just making you want to go to class or just trying to torture you. We have no choice. The ABA requires that. So the only way you can receive credit is to have a contemporaneous course component. Okay, and that's where I come in. I teach that course component. Again, so make sure that's what we talk about. If you're late on your externship, if you got one and that course is full, you're going to be stuck. You can still do the externship, right? You're going to become an intern now, however, because you're not going to receive credit. You have to do that contemporaneous course component. Can't repeat the program, 12 credits and you're done. That's not our rule, again, that's the ABA. Can you work with the judge outside of the externship program? Yes, right? You just won't receive credit for it. Okay, so if you get that externship, but you got it late, or you've already burned your 12 credits, or whatever the case may be, but you want to do another one, I'm not saying you can't do that. Okay, what we're saying is you can't receive credit for it. And again, how do you find a judge to work with? I think Andrea made a really good point. We have a lot of classmates currently that are clerking for judges. They're in my class, so I know, and I meet with them. Find out who they are. Talk to them. Ask them how they did it. Ask them who they clerked for. Right? Your network starts now. Get to know each other. We all have our law schools that we went to and our law schools that we love, and quite frankly, I think you're at a good one as far as that's concerned. You have a very supportive network here, and judges that are out there that will help you too. So make sure you go ahead and find out about that.
What time is the seminar generally? Because if you're working full-time, is it going to be a night class?
That'll be an online course component. So if you are clerking full-time, you would go to an online course component. So we try to work with you in that sense.
It's a Friday class.
The class, there is a class. The class component is Friday afternoon from 3 to 5. So there's a course component, there's an actual course, there's a seminar course, and then there's an online component. So there's two. And you'll see it in your registration book. And then courts.gov, and then again, for the 15th time, make an appointment with SCS.
Yeah.
So, if you have questions, I went through this quickly, but not a problem. Everything is online, and in my office.
Can I just say, looking at the presentation, I think it was dead on. I mean, of course, I didn't see the presentation before, but hopefully it was exactly what I was telling you guys. But as county counsel, we had externs from Santa Clara, so it's not just judicial externships.
A lot of
you can do it in the DA's office, county counsel, whatever. But I'll tell you the thing that's really the win-win about it. We, among lawyers, will send emails to each other and say, hey, we got externs coming in. Who has the most interesting issue to work on? We want you to work on interesting things. And one of the key things you'll get out of it is a great writing sample. And that's going to lead to a job. So it's networking, writing samples. There's no downside to it, I guess is all I would end with.
Exactly.
And I think this presentation is right on.
Thank you.
Well, thank you so much, Justice
Yeah.
Marquez. We all learned a lot.
I know I did.